like how to ask Chang, he stood there and looked at one of Chang's, I guess, right-hand men, and he waited
Yes.
till he got approval from that guy to go. So he's very polite in that regard. And he doesn't try to cheat. He doesn't try to, he basically just tries to box. Like, he throws a couple knees, but he never cheats. He just fist fights this thing. I think this is so much more of an interesting character than the driver. To me, I've said this 8 times, but I love this aspect of the character.
You know, the more you say it, Mark, the more I'm thinking back to Drive, and it's really like, it is like night and day, you know, because you could look at both of them and say, oh, it's just Ryan Gosling and he's not saying much in either movie. But you're right, there is a world of difference, because the driver is more of a blank slate throughout. And even though Julian doesn't spend a lot of, I think the IMDb said he only has like 17 lines in the whole movie. You get so much more of a feel for his character based on body language, his interactions with other people, just the way he looks at people, you know. So I think I think you're right. It's definitely the more fleshed out, more 3-dimensional character. Yeah.
And, you know, the movies we talked about the house. This is our Good Times trilogy: Drive to Cause Concrete, The House of Jack Built, and this. I just love, so some of my favorite characters are, I love the movie Unforgiven, right? I love movies like
good movie. Yeah.
Royal Tenenbaums or Take Shelter, where people are just in these situations where they're trying. I don't know. They're Julian could have succumbed. Like, when I hate that he tells May to take off her dress, right? But then he just gives it back to her. So he had his bully moment. Obviously, I'm not saying he's a good guy. But it's just interesting, this character study of a guy who could have gone evil, and he's still trying to fight it. I'm reading into it too much, but I don't know. I thought this movie has much more weight than a lot of people give it credit.
No, I absolutely agree with that, and I think you could say that scene where he tells her to take the dress off, it's the one time in the movie where he raises his voice above like a whisper, basically. And it's such a shock, because it's like, oh yeah, he probably just wanted to unload on his mom while he was sitting there, but it's one of those things where you wind up projecting on the person who will take it, kind of.
Yeah.
instead of telling the person who you really want to tell it to. So no, I totally agree with you, Mark. It's definitely a very, it sounds cheesy to say, but it's a strangely spiritual movie, and I think it resonates on a deeper level because it's a little more ambitious. It's not as earthbound as Drive. Like you were talking about Valhalla Rising, and I think that's probably a good comparison point for this.
All right. How about this? Let's take a quick break. We come back. We'll talk more. Only God Forgives. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks, and we have to talk about the torture scene, Jonny Numb.
Oh, good Lord, yeah.
So, Chang is, there's a drive-by shooting. Chang is almost killed. So basically what happens is, Julian's brother's killed, and because Julian's brother rapes and kills a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Then the cop shows up, and lets the father kill the brother.
Mm-hmm.
And then Julian was supposed to go and kill the father. But Julian said no, because, the brother raped and it was fair. The mom shows up and she says he had his reasons for destroying a young girl, which is insane.
Yeah.
She has a young boy slit the throat of the father, which...
And it bears noting that for what he did to Billy, Chang chops off the father's right hand.
Yep, chops off his right hand, and Chang allows it too, which is pretty wild. So then they kill the father who killed Billy. But then the problem is there's this cop involved, Chang. So Crystal puts a hit on Chang. A lot of people get killed, but Chang does not die. Chang ends up actually brutally slicing open a man's ribcage.
Yes.
Inside of this weird place where there's a lot of film, which I guess, knowing how seedy the world is, it's like, what's on all these reels?
In the commentary, Nicolas Winding Refn said it wasn't actually film, even though it looks like film cans. He said it wasn't, but I like where you're going with that, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that in the commentary. I was like, I'm going to ignore that. It's film.
Because I was thinking the exact same thing, and I was thinking, what the hell are those plastic bags hanging from the ceiling?
And it's just
yeah.
And then I like how the guy who put the hit out on Chang basically said, "I accept my punishment, but don't hurt this kid I'm with." Who they actually found the kid in an orphanage, which is pretty gnarly. The guy who got the oil in his face by Chang, one of the hitmen gets killed. So then that leads us to Chang finding Byron at what would you say, like a sex club?
I believe it's like an upscale brothel.
Oh yeah.
Refn was talking about how they shot like in brothels, and they were like all kind of upscale places. Yeah.
Yeah. So he shot in an upscale brothel. I have a question. There's a scene where Crystal is watching these guys flex. Do you think she likes that because it's strength?
I could, that's a good observation. Yeah, just like muscle on top of muscle. It's kind of, but she's looking at them in a very predatory way, and it's the way that scene you're talking about is shot. You're not sure what she's looking at because there's no context until Refn reveals the bodybuilders. For a while, you think she's in the same room with Julian looking at Mai. So it's yeah. So strength, yeah.
And all right, so then this leads to Chang finding Byron at this upscale brothel, and he stabs his legs.
Mm-hmm.
No, he stabs his arms. He goes through his okay, I guess I can set this up. Byron's sitting in a chair with his arms on the armrest, and Chang stabs him at the same time through his, basically right below his wrists, so he's stabbed into the chair.
Yeah, he's pinned. Yeah.
Literally pinned, because those were big pins. Oh, no.
Oh!
Hey, boom, try the veal. And then he gets his leg stabbed, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets his, let's see, what's the next?
He cuts his left eye with a knife.
Cuts his left eye with a knife.
Yeah.
I have my notes in here. Let's see.
And I think he drives the pins into his ears. Yeah.
So he goes arms, legs, eyes, ears.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
Well, and I love how he's speaking. Chang is speaking kind of in this weird. I'm trying. There's a name for what. There's a specific name for what he's doing. It's almost like he's talking in riddles. It's like you can't see what's good for you, so you should not be able to see. You obviously don't listen, so why do you need ears? Something to that effect. So he says something really. Really poetic before he does these horrible things to this guy who has it coming. I mean, I have no qualms saying that this guy deserves what he's getting, but
yeah, he went behind Julian's back and it's excessive. Now, this character Chang, he has moments of anger, but he also has moments of mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty interesting, but it's interesting how angry he gets and how merciful he can be.
Yeah.
He's like, you come to my city and you do this? How come the tattooed guy didn't get anything happening to him?
Are you talking about the redheaded guy?
Yeah, Byron was sitting next to the redheaded tattooed guy when he ordered the hit, and that same guy was in the back of the club.
Oh, you know what? I missed that he was in the back of the club, actually. I know who you're talking about, and I was actually wondering that myself because after I rewatched it without the commentary, I watched it with the commentary, that time I was like, where is this guy, and why isn't he getting on the receiving end of any of this divine justice that's happening?
He was sweating bullets in the back of that club.
Okay, I believe you.
He's like, is he going to come to me next? And then they never go to him. Do you just leave then? Or do you take over? Like, because their syndicate is done, right? So there's going to be an even bigger turf war now, correct? To take over there?
I feel like that's how it tends to go, at least in the movies, so yeah.
Who got there first, Billy or Julian in Bangkok?
Actually, I think Crystal reveals at one point that Billy came over after Julian did, I think. I feel like there's some dialogue about that.
So he fled wherever 10,000 miles away, and he starts the empire there? Or do you think he just got a house and was living, and then Billy came over and did all that?
I mean, that's a good question. I'm thinking the way Crystal makes it sound is that Julian was kind of like, oh, he's good with his hands, but he's soft on the inside or something like that. He's too sensitive. So maybe Julian went over and then Billy came to like be the enforcer or whatever to try and, because I can see Billy being ruthless to a unconscionable degree, but I can't quite see Julian going that same distance that, criminal enterprise kind of requires, that muscling and strong arming stuff. So,
because they owned a section of Bangkok.
Okay,
which,
yeah.
Right? They did, because she had all those kilos of drugs coming in.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like your territory, your zone, kind of, yeah.
They must have had some crazy City of God dread turf wars.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, if what we see in the movie when those dominoes start dropping, like the whole massacre at that restaurant, could you imagine that happening on a daily basis? Yeah.
How great is Kristen Scott Thomas in this movie?
She is scary good in this movie.
Like
I would not. Yeah, I didn't want to be anywhere near that table when they were having dinner, so I can imagine how she would be like in whatever we don't see filmed of her character. So yeah.
Did he actually see her in that room, or was she in his head because she was waiting there for him like almost like a specter, like a ghost? Do you think that scene happened?
I would say that one could be taken fairly literally.
Okay.
In my estimation, because we've already established, I think at that point that she's in the country, so she's checked into the hotel, and right from the get-go she's berating and insulting the desk clerk for inconveniencing her. So I would buy the fact that she's aware of the boxing club and she knows where to find Julian, and so I could see her totally just making herself at home in a very perverse, incestuous way. Yeah.
Why is her hallway and room bathed in yellow? A lot of scenes with her is yellow, but then Julian lives in red.
I kind of go back to like the repressed, rage, anger, of his character that I associate with his character. A lot of blood gets spilled in the film, I think, of, red. It's a beautiful neon red, but it's just, another thing. It's like, blood all over the place, people getting beaten up, people getting shot, stabbed, the whole enchilada, as they say.
And I guess the good thing about yellow is it can represent, happiness or positivity, but it also can represent deceit. It can represent sickness, jealousy. So I think this is a good color for her, because a mom, you should have this loyalty with your mother. But then, this color has so many different representations, but so does red, right? Love and blood. So, I mean, it could go for any color, but I thought that the yellow was interesting with her. I know they contrasted, but I kind of liked that yellow. Like, I don't know. I dug that. It seemed like a smart color choice for the palette of the film.
Mark, I'm glad you brought that up, because the guy that you were talking about in the back of the club, his name is Gordon. And something I took note of was immediately after the father gets his throat slit, Gordon, walks through Crystal's hotel penthouse loft or whatever, and it's yellow, like the lighting is yellow around the entrance to the balcony, but it's also green. So I was thinking kind of like a sick, nauseated kind of thing going on there as well.
Oh, that's good. And also kind of wealth, since it's in the penthouse.
Yeah.
Are you talking about in the penthouse?
Yeah.
No, but you're absolutely right. Like the kind of sickening. I mean, that's what that color represents as well. I mean, I don't think any of these choices were an accident, right?
Oh no, absolutely. I think,
hey, look what color that is. Woo. That was a happy accident.
No, yeah. I think with Refn's films, you go on to the Neon Demon, and that movie is probably even more color obsessive than this film is. But I just love that about his stuff. It's just it's something that pulls you in, even when the stuff that's happening on screen is totally heinous and hideous and sometimes unwatchable.
I like what Larry Smith, the cinematographer, did. And I looked him up. He'd also done Bronson. He did The Guard, which is a movie I love, with Brendan Gleeson and Don Cheadle. But he also worked on Eyes Wide Shut. He was the gaffer on The Shining. He was the lighting cameraman on Barry Lyndon. He worked on the Alienist, which I loved. And also a movie called Tao on Netflix with Micah Monroe that looks really good. So I just thought it's really interesting how this guy Larry Smith, I mean, he actually went to work on Bronson and The Guard, but the Eyes Wide Shut, Shining, and Barry Lyndon are the complete opposite of Only God Forgives, and the fact that they took 6 months, or like obviously only God forgives. It didn't film all the time, but these are so camera heavy and lighting, like so specific.